Hi everyone, Nicholas Buffidis here from Cyprus, and yes, it's still sunny over here. Okay, so today's video tutorial is an Excel video tutorial and it's all about conditional formatting. Now, primarily these video tutorials are focused for students taking the IGCSE 0417 Cambridge ICT examination. However, they're fantastic tutorials for anybody who's interested in improving their skills in Excel, or they just want to learn a little bit more about using some of the features in Excel. Conditional formatting is a tool which allows us to easily identify either trends or values or something within the data that we've got in our spreadsheet. We're going to be looking at some of the preset tools in Excel for conditional formatting, and then we're going to move on to creating our own custom conditional formatting rules, and we're going to end up finally with the more difficult conditional formatting using formulas. Now, I say more difficult because creating conditional formatting rules with formulas requires a little bit more knowledge about how formulas work with conditional formatting, and it requires a little bit of knowledge about absolute, mixed, and relative references. Now, we've already covered this in a previous tutorial. I'm going to have the link added in the description of this video down below, so you can go have a look at that. And once you've understood formulas with conditional formatting, I don't think you're going to use anything else, because it's a fantastic way to implement conditional formatting on your data. So let's get started. Okay, we're going to start with some basic conditional formatting using some of the preset tools that Excel gives us, and that's going to be in the conditional formatting section here. So I'm in the home menu here, and on the home menu we've got conditional formatting, and as soon as we open this drop down list box, this menu, we can see some of the preset conditional formattings that we can apply, and this will be things like highlighting cell rules, and we can see here greater than, less than, between. We've got things like to display the top 10, the bottom 10, or the top percentile, below and above average, and then we've got some color scales which we're going to have a look at very quickly. So we're going to start off by selecting the data that we want to apply conditional formatting to. In this case, I'm going to use the weight column. This is a spreadsheet on mobile phones, and here is the weight column, the weight of the mobile phones. So I'm just going to click on the first one in my selection, go down to the bottom, hold the shift button down, and then click on the last one to select that range. Now remember, the golden rule is select, then do. You must first select the data you want to apply conditional formatting to. Then I'm going to go to conditional formatting, and I'm going to choose the first one here. We're going to try and find all the ones, or basically highlight all the phones which are above 100 grams, because we can see here a light phone is considered up to 100 grams. So let me just do my selection again. There we go. Okay, so conditional formatting, highlight cells greater than, and I'm just going to put here format cells that are greater than. I'm going to make that 100. And you can choose, predefined set colors. I'm just going to use a light red, and automatically you can see my data here is already highlighting the cells which meet that criteria with light red. Now I can put the value in manually myself, or I can use a cell value. So here I'm going to choose B4, and if I select that, there we go. It's going to apply to B4, so everything which is greater than whatever's inside B4. Now I want you to notice very carefully here that it's applied absolute referencing, and we know it's applied absolute referencing because it's put these dollar signs before the B. So it's $B, $4. Now I've already covered relative, absolute, and mixed referencing in a different video. Make sure to see, if you want to see that video again, go down to the description. I'll have the link to that video there. Now, essentially the reason why it's applying absolute referencing, and I'm going to explain this because it's very important that you understand this concept so that you can understand much clearer when we talk about conditional formatting with formulas. So let me just go over this concept very quickly with you. All right, now then, so there's my spreadsheet, and I'm just using this so I can do some easy inking on this. Okay, so what is this doing? Now notice that initially we started off with selecting our cell range, all of these items in column C. However, when we apply conditional formatting, we have to consider that it's only applying to this very first cell, the first cell in our selection, this one here. Now, the reason why is so that we can then determine how we're going to deal with the referencing. Okay? And what do I mean by this? Well, essentially, this formula here is saying that C8, which is this cell, C8, the contents of C8, and I'm going to put that here. And that is saying that C8 is greater than or equal to whatever is here. And that's $B, $4. Now, why does it do this? Because I've selected to conditionally format all of these cells in this column C. So this one here is C8 is greater or equal to B4. If that's true, then it's going to highlight that with red. It's not, it's false. So now it goes down and checks the next one. That next one now is C9. So if we write that here, C9 is equal to, greater than or equal to $B, $4. Now it's going to stay as B4 because this is an absolute reference. So this here is not allowed to change. This can't change. However, the C8, which is this one here, can move down to show this one here, which is C9. And so on and so forth. It's going to then move to this one, then this one, then this one. And it's going to compare each one of these to whatever's inside here, B4. Because B4 is an absolute reference and cannot change. Now, I know you don't need to know this. Excel does this for you automatically, but it's very important that you understand why it's using an absolute reference so that we can then use this to our advantage later when we're going to look at formulas with conditional formatting. So that's that explained. Let's just go back now to our Excel spreadsheet. Okay, so basically now what that has done, if I click OK, that has applied this, and we can see all the ones which are greater than the contents of what's inside this cell is actually highlighted in red. And if I was to decide that a heavy phone is now anything which is above 150, I can simply change that, press enter, and only the phones which are greater than 150 are highlighted in red. And you know, that's the unique thing and the beautiful thing about conditional formatting. It's so easy to identify data. So that's the first step. Let's go back to conditional formatting. I'm going to go back to manage rules now, and any rules that I've applied, let me just select this. I'm going to select this cell range here and conditional formatting, manage rules. Any rules that I have applied to this range here will be displayed here. So I can just select this and delete this rule. Click OK, and that conditional formatting has gone. Let's go have a look at a few other ones. So you've got less than, you can use between, so anything which is between a value and another value, that's pretty easy. So you can say anything which is between 100 and 150, or actually let's do 100 and 150. Okay, and that's going to highlight that with red. There you go. So I'm not going to click OK, I'm just going to cancel that. Right, other ones that we have are things like top bottom rules. These are actually quite useful. So you want to find the top 10 heaviest phones, then I can simply select this and I can choose the top 10, or let's say the top 5. So here we are, it's going to show me these top 5 here as soon as I click OK. So these are the top 5 phones, the ones that are highlighted in red. Okay, I'm going to do undo there, so we can get rid of that. Let's go look at a few more. Now, data bars are quite good, so you can play around with these. I don't, you know, some of these for me are not very interesting. Let's just have a look here again in the highlight cells. So we can find here text as well, text that contains something. So if I want to find in this range of cells here where we've got some text, and I want to find all the ones which contain, I don't know, let's say the letters SE, then I can go from here and do text that contains, and I'm just going to put SE, click OK, and there we go. So we've got sendo, sendo, oh, all the sendo ones. There you go. Okay, so some really nice, I'm just going to undo that, Control Z. So you've got some really nice, you know, predefined sets of rules here, making it very easy for you to apply conditional formatting. We're going to have a look at this one as well now, the color scales. These are actually quite interesting. So let's go to talk time now. The color scales, and some of these can only be implemented to numerical data, and for quite obvious reasons. If you're looking for the top 10 of something, or you're looking for the highest to the lowest, then it's going to be numeric data. So color scales are really useful. You know, these are predefined, preset for you. So here, anything which is green is the highest value, and going down to yellow, and then red is the lowest. The other one is the other way round. So red is the highest, yellow is the middle, green is the lowest. So if I select that, we can very easily see which phones have got, you know, a longer talk time, just by looking for all the ones which are closer to the red color. So this is like bright reddish. That means this is at the maximum, this is 600, and all the ones which are green, you know, really solid green, these are the lowest, things like 90, and you can find these very, very easily. Okay, 105, and this is in comparison to the highest and lowest value in this selection. So if I was to put a value here, which is, let's say, 10,000, you will see all of these now change. There's only one which is red. Most of them are in the yellow range now, because this is a really high number. Okay, so that's using the preset values. I'm just going to undo that. And now I want us to have a look. Well, you've got these as well. I have never really used these before, these icon sets, but maybe there's a use for them somewhere. You can play around with them, you know, and if you like, you know, these will give you like arrows, and depending on whether it's the highest value, the lowest value, or a middle value, it will have an arrow, a colored arrow pointing in a particular direction. You can have like grayscale, you've got symbols, you can mess around with these. Okay, let's go now to create our own rule. Let's go standby time. So let's use this range of cells here. Okay. Now, this is how long, you know, the phone can stay on standby for. This is calculated in minutes. So we're going to go to conditional formatting, and this time we're going to create our own custom rule. Now we can do this directly from here, from new rule, or we can go to manage rules. It's the same thing. By going to manage rules, I will start a new rule. I will get this dialog box. If I go directly from here and choose new rule, you'll see it's exactly the same thing. So the first one that we're going to have a look at is format all cells based on their values. So here it's just like the preset ones, only you've got a little bit more control. So you can choose, for example, a format style, 2 colors, or you can choose 3 colors. And here the lowest color is orange, the highest color is yellow, and you can change that around. Let's say I'm going to make that, let's say, light green, and I'm going to make the maximum, let's say, a dark blue. And if I want 3 color scale, I can do that there and just choose another one there, put a bit of orange there. So this is my lowest, that's my highest, and the orange is the middle. And as soon as I click on OK, you can see it's going to color code these according to their values. Okay, undo. Let's try something new. So manage rule, we're going to go create a new rule again. This time we're going to have a look at format only cells that contain. So here you can use this particular one on values or on text. So if you say cell value, you've got all of these options here. Between, not between, so you can choose the outside of the extreme value. So if you say not between 50 and 60, then it will choose all the ones, it will highlight all the ones which are, say, 50 below and 60 above, nothing in between. Equal to, not equal to, I think these are all self-explanatory. You can use these for text as well. So if I was to choose a different one, and I'm going to choose now this one here, the model, and I want to do some formatting on there, new rule. So I'm going to go format only cells that contain, and here I'm going to say cell value, specific text. Let's look for specific text this time. I'm going to be looking for anything that has a Z inside. I can remember the model is Z something. I can't remember what it is. So I'm just going to put everything that contains the letter Z, and I'm going to format that so it gives me a light blue cell. Click OK, click OK, and there you go. So all of these ones here which are highlighted have got the letter Z inside that model. And again, you can obviously apply this to numbers as well. So let's just do an undo and try something else. Let's go to talk time, conditional formatting, and we're going to go to a new rule. So here we've got format only top and bottom ranked values. So you can choose the top 10. And this is like what we saw with the preset ones. We just got a little bit more control. You could say the top 10%. I can choose, I'll say the top 13% of a selected range, and then just format those to, I don't know, do a yellowy color here. And all of these are in the top 13 percentile. So this is really good when it comes to teachers and grade books. Okay, so let's move away from this now. Let's just do an undo there. And I think we've basically covered most of these. You've got these ones here, format only values that are above or below an average. And you can have any one of these options here, above, below, equal or above, so on and so forth. And you format. And again, I've only been doing formatting on the cell color, but you can actually format the type of number, whether it's a date format. You can change the formatting of that value. You can change the font, the style of that font, bold, italic. You can change the border or the field color. So I just use the field color because it's just so much easier to change one item right now. Okay, I'm going to show you one more. This is an interesting one. Format only unique or duplicate values. So if you want to find if there are any duplicates in your list, and there shouldn't be, let's say it's a primary key or unique key or a serial number or whatever that is, and you want to find if there's a duplicate in there, you can format here. You can find all the duplicates, or you can find all the unique values. So if I'm looking for any duplicates, I'm just going to format this to display in, I don't know, an orangey color there. Click OK. And in this cell range here, all of these values which are highlighted are actually duplicated somewhere. So if you take here, 270 is duplicated here again, 270. 166, 260, 390, 220, these have not been formatted. So these are actually unique numbers. Okay, so a nice little trick there so you can find whether you've made a mistake by using a serial number or unique number 2 times. Okay, I think we're going to move over now to start building towards using formulas. So what I want to do now is to show you, first of all, when you're doing conditional formatting and you're going to do manage rules, and this time you're going to use a new rule and you're going to use a formula, we need to add a formula here. And that formula must return a true or false value. Okay, that's very, very important. You can't use any kind of formula. It has to be a formula that returns a true or false value. So let's click on OK. We're just going to cancel that and we're going to decide what we're going to do. So right now I'm going to start off in this new cell here just to see how a true and false value is returned from a formula. So I'm going to create a calculation here, which is going to be a true false return. And essentially what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to calculate the volume of the phone to determine whether it's a large phone or not. So I'm going to do this like this. I'm going to put equals to, and I'm going to multiply the length of this first phone here, multiplied by the length, by the width, multiplied by the height. And if that value is greater than or equal to what is determined to be a large phone, which is this one here, okay, so that will be the volume. So if these three multiplied together are actually larger than that value, it's determined to be a large phone. So I'm going to press enter here, and that gives me a false. Now I want you to see that here I have used B5 as a relative reference, and that's going to be wrong because as I start copying this down, then that's going to be moving down as well. So if I do that now, double click, and that will copy for the rest of them. Let's just compare this middle one here. Click here and we can see that although it's using the correct length, width and height, so I'm looking at D14, E14 and F14, that's fine because the result is actually in J14, so these are the values I want. I want to actually compare them, the multiplication of these, the product to be compared to B5, and it's not. This one has also moved down to here, and that's because it was a relative reference. So let me just press escape, go back to the first one, make this B5 into an absolute reference by pressing the F4 key at the top of my keyboard, press enter, and now I'm just going to copy these down again by double clicking on the fill handle. There we go. And I'm just going to do a quick check, click here, and there we go. It's using the correct cells for J15. And if I wanted to now simply highlight using conditional formatting to highlight all the ones which are considered large phones, I can do this. I can go from here, home, conditional formatting, do a new rule. I'm going to do a rule based on format only cells that contain, and I want all the ones which are equal to the word true. and format those using, I don't know, light orangey color there. Click OK and OK. So all of these phones here are considered to be large, and that's really easy and really cool to do. But it required me to actually add another column, which I don't like doing. And also, if I want to see which phone this is, I have to actually find this and highlight this row and see which one it is. And that's, let's say, the Nokia 7650. Okay, so let's say I wanted to implement this formatting directly on the make of the phone. So I'm going to select the make of the phone, and that's this one here. So I'm not going to delete this column because I want to use this column as a comparison to see that it's actually selecting the correct ones. So I'm just going to leave that there just for reference, but it's not needed for the formula. So essentially what I want to do, I want to conditional format these cells, these selected cells here, based on the length, the width and the height, and compare that to B5, which is what determines a large phone. So to do this, again, I'm going to go to Home, Conditional Formatting, New Rule. I'm going to add a rule with a formula. Now, here's where we want to be a little bit more careful. So I'm just going to bring this, where should I put this here so it's not taking up too much space? I'm going to put that here. Okay. Now, essentially what we want to do is this. Remember that when we're creating conditional formatting using a formula, the formula is going to look at this very first cell. So your formula is going to be based solely upon this first cell in the selection, and the result for this first cell is going to be dependent upon this formula and whether it returns a true or a false. So the formula in this case is going to be, for this first cell, it's going to be the length, this length here, multiplied by the width for this one, multiplied by the height. Now notice, whenever you're doing conditional formatting, any cell reference you choose, automatically it will be applied as an absolute reference. And I can see that because of those dollar signs. I don't want that to be true in this case, but I'm going to leave it there for now because I like seeing the error occur, and then I can go back and fix it. And I'm saying that the length multiplied by the width multiplied by the height is greater than or equal to whatever's inside B5. Now B5 is also an absolute reference, and I know that's going to be correct because as I'm going to start looking at the next phone, so first it's Triumph and then Motorola, then Ericsson, as these move down, I don't want it to change from B5 to B6 to B7. I always want it to be looking at this cell here, B5. Let's just click on a format, and I'm going to change that so it formats to, let's say, a bright yellow there. Click OK and click OK. And we can see none of these phones, and I know for a fact this one here should have been highlighted because I saw the true value here. It should be highlighted, but it's not. The reason it's not is because if I just select this now, go to my conditional formatting, here's my rule, this one here, is because all of these here are always looking at D8, E8 and F8. So let's just put this in my whiteboard very quickly and just analyze and see what's happening. Okay, so let's analyze this now. So essentially we said that whenever we're using conditional formatting using formulas, it's going to look at the first one in the selection. The first one in our selection is this one here, Triumph. And the formula says D8 multiplied by E8 multiplied by F8, and compare that to B5. So that's fine because it's going to be using D8, E8 and F8, and those are the values that we want for this particular phone on this row, on row 8, and it's going to be looking at this one here, which is B5. Now once it does that, it will calculate true or false and format accordingly. In this case it's false because it's not greater than 150,000. Then the conditional formatting, I'm going to use blue now, is going to move down to the next one. It's going to move down to here, to Motorola, which is row 9. However, it's going to be looking at this one here, the next one in the selection, but instead of looking at D9, E9 and F9, it's still looking at the red values, D8, E8, F8, and that's because it's got absolute referencing for D8, E8 and F8. It's got those dollar signs. So it's always going to be looking at these red values. So we're going to get the same answer for all of them. And we don't want that. We want to actually change these to, well, either relative or mixed references. And what do I mean by that? So currently we have, let's just take one of them, $D, $8. That doesn't allow the column or the row number to change. Now, if we look at what's happening, as we're going to be copying down here for column D, we want it to go from D8 to D9, D10, D11, D12, so on and so forth. So the D is never going to change anyway. So I could leave that as $D. What is changing though is the row number. We want the row number to change. And right now, because of this $, it can't. So we can make that D, $D8. That's known as mixed referencing, because one of these, the column letter, let's just make that a proper D, the column letter is actually fixed and the row number is not. We cannot use D, $9, because that will allow the column letter to change when it's not changing anyway, but it won't allow, sorry, D, $8. It won't allow the row number to change from 8 to 9 to 10 to 11. So we've got an option. We can either use $D8, or we can simply use relative referencing, D8. Both will work. The reason why, because the D is not changing anyway. So let's go and do that very quickly. Okay, so from here, I'm going to click in my formula. I'm going to press the F4 repeatedly until I get D$8. I'm going to use mixed references. In fact, let's use relative for now. And that one there. Now, F4 is a toggle switch, so every time you press it, it will toggle through absolute, mixed, and relative. And then just click on OK. Now, I don't need to select all of this. I just need to select this first one to modify the conditional formatting. Once I've done that and click OK, can you see now exactly the same ones have been selected? Okay, so that is working. So I don't really need this column. I can just get rid of that. Okay, so I can actually format cells based on other cells, not the contents of those selected cells. Okay, what would be really cool, however, instead of just highlighting one of the cells, how about if the entire row was highlighted to show that? Well, that just gets a little bit more tricky, not more than what we've actually got, but let's do this and see how it's going to work. So I'm just going to go clear all of the conditional formatting. I'm going to go to Home. I'm going to go to my conditional formatting. And here where I've got clear rules, I can either clear the rules from selected cells, so that will be this. I can select all of these and just clear the formatting for those cells by doing that. Or I can clear all of the rules on this entire spreadsheet. So I'm just going to choose that one there. So I've got no conditional formatting on this spreadsheet right now. So essentially, if I want to highlight the whole row and highlight the whole row of the phones which are considered to be large phones, then I need to select my whole table. So I'm just going to select all of this because I need to select, then do. Remember the golden rule. Whatever we want to format and we want to change depending on whether it's a true or a false on the formula, it has to be selected. So since I want to highlight the whole row, I need to select the whole table. Now, the next step is I'm going to go to Home, Conditional Formatting, Manage Rules, or New Rule. It makes no difference. Let's go from Manage Rules now. And that will just show us that we've got no other rules here. New Rule. And we're going to create a rule based on formulas. Now, let's analyze this again. Remember, the formula is going to be based on the very first cell in the selection. And the very first cell is this one here. Before I go on, I'm going to take a screenshot to explain this very quickly. Okay, so let's analyze this now, and remember that when it comes to formulas in conditional formatting, it's always going to start from the very first cell in the selection, and that's that one there, A8. And then it's going to apply the formula according to this first cell. It's going to be using these numbers here. It's going to be using the length, the width, and the height. So my formula is going to look like this. D8 multiplied by E8 multiplied by F8, and we're going to say that's greater or equal to whatever's inside $B, $5. And I know that one's going to be absolute because I always want it to be looking at that value here. Now, that's so much for the first cell. Okay, if this result is true, then it's going to be formatted accordingly. If it's false, then it's not formatted. However, we've seen what happens when it goes down one. Okay, all of these are going to move down. But in this case, because we're working on 2 dimensions now, the first thing that's going to happen is it's going to check the next cell. So it's going to jump from here to here and check this cell to see whether this cell needs to be formatted. Now, because we're moving from A8 to B8 at the same time, and I'm going to use blue now, D8 is going to jump over to E8, E8 is going to jump over to F8, and F8 is going to jump over to G8. And we don't want that. We want that to be fixed. So essentially we want, as it's moving across, I want the letters to be fixed. So I need to put these as dollar signs. I need to put a dollar sign there, and a dollar sign there, and a dollar sign there. And it's going to do the same one for here. So when this one moves over to from B to C, so it's going to be looking at whether it's going to format this cell. Now these ones are not going to move because the D cannot change, the E cannot change, and the F cannot change. Okay, so that's all good. So now I will be able to format all of the cells in row 8 without any issues, simply by making this mixed reference using $D8 multiplied by $E8 multiplied by $F8. Now, when it goes down to the next row to here, well, what's going to happen? This one's moving down, so from A8 it becomes A9. That's fine. We're looking at this one here now. Now, as this has moved down one, this wants to move down one. So that's going to go to let's start from here. $D, that's going to stay the same, but the row number can change. It's going to go to 9, D9. So it's going to be looking at this one. That's correct, because that's the one I want for this row. Then this one is multiplied by $E. That can't change, okay? And that will become a 9. Multiplied by $F, and that will become a 9. And of course, bigger or equal to $B, $5. And that's good, because that's going to be using these numbers here. Now again, as it goes from this one to this one, it moves over one. So from A9 it goes to B9. It makes no difference to these because the column letter cannot change. The D can't change to E, the E can't change to F, and the F can't change to G. So that's going to be perfect. So here we have to use mixed references. We cannot use relative and we can't use absolute. So let's go and implement this. So in this case, my first formula here is going to be the length multiplied by the width multiplied by the height. And I'm going to say all of that is greater or equals to whatever is inside B5. Now we know that has to be absolute, but these ones here, I only want to lock the column letter. I don't want the column letters to change. So I'm going to press F4 until I get the mixed reference holding the column letter. So that's that one, $D8, and this one $DE8, and then this one $F8. And I'm going to format these to be a yellow shade. And as soon as I click OK, now it will hopefully, there we go, it highlights the entire row, not just the one cell, depending on if the volume or the size of that phone is larger than this number. And of course, if I reduce that number down now to, let's say, 120,000, then I'll have more phones. So these are all considered large. So that's conditional formatting. Remember, using conditional formatting with formulas is a little bit more tricky, requires good understanding of absolute and relative referencing, although all of the conditional formatting rules require an understanding of referencing, absolute, mixed and relative, but you don't really need to worry about it too much because what Excel does by default is usually correct. When it comes to using formulas, however, you have to have a better understanding. And the good trick is always to use another column, enter your formula and see if the true false results which appear are correct. Okay, if you've learned something new, you've enjoyed this video, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.